If you were to see Jen DeGroff in the gym, you'd see a woman who moves with confidence. She's strong, she's focused, and she's deeply tuned into the people she trains as a personal trainer. But if you had met her a few years ago, you would have seen a very different version of that same strength. One that was being poured into a decade-long corporate career, data strategies, and executive boardrooms. Jen is someone who has mastered the art of checking the boxes. She has the MBA, the high level marketing career, and the life that, by every traditional metric, looked absolutely perfect on paper. But as she tells it, while she was busy saying yes to everyone else's expectations, she was losing the ability to hear her own voice. The stress wasn't just a feeling, it was a physical barrier that eventually forced her to stop and ask, who is this life actually for? Today, Jen is leading a whole new life. As the founder of TrueIcon, she guides others to be their favorite versions of themselves, both inside and out. We're talking about how we build a perfect life that acts as a cage and what happens when we finally decide to stop performing and start living. We're going to look at the exact click moment where she realized that the trophies and the titles weren't enough and how she finally learned to hear her own voice again. Today, she is helping us tackle the big question: how do I figure out what I really want after years of high performing in a role you've now outgrown? I'm Kristen Rocco, a Bold Moves coach and mentor, and this is the Bold Moves How Did You Know podcast. Here, we actively reject the narrative of a midlife crisis, and instead, we step into our emboldened midlife click. Maybe you're here because of a sudden wake-up call that shifted your perspective, or you've simply reached the quiet exhaustion of high performing at a game you no longer want to play. Whether you're standing at a career crossroads or wearing an identity that simply no longer fits, you're in the right place. Hey, Jen, welcome to the Bold Moves How Did You Know podcast.
I'm so happy to be here and thanks for the time. And I'm so excited to dive into it today.
Me too. Me too. You have the journey that so many other people also experience, but never make the change, even though many of us are feeling that call to make a change. I'm excited to talk to you about how you heard your voice again and then what you did to make the shift, make a transformational shift, not just a little step forward, right? I would love for you to give us all an insider's peek at your life before you rewrote it.
Whether it was work or school, I was the high achieving. I was looking for the good grades. I was trying to do what was right and all of the things. Okay, whether it's getting the A's, and it's not even that I had so much pressure externally. Even my parents were like, you can get B's, you can get whatever, but I'm like, I'm gonna get A's, I'm gonna do the best I can. So I think it started then. It started when I was constantly trying to be, yes, the best version of myself, but then it slowly evolved into just checking the boxes because of that. Even in college, I started off just getting typical grades, and then once I got my first A, then I got another, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do so much better. So it was an interesting balance, but not really. I was way too much into the performance of it versus the doing it, because I like to push myself and I find that is healthy. Like, I find the healthy challenge. But what was happening was I was putting too much into that performance, where that throughout school carried me into life. So what it looked like, felt like, it was me at a job. I started working at a startup company right after school. You live, breathe, sleep, dream the company. And I took that to heart, and it was fun in the beginning, but then what was happening was a lot of my interests, the things I loved, were just non-existent. It was the company. Oh, I got to get this deadline. I got to get this. So then my thoughts, my sleep patterns, everything was evolved around that. And what it felt like, it was a lot of stress. What was fun and cool became very taxing and stressful, and I didn't see a way out, and I had health problems. I had going to all these doctors with gastro. I had a lot of gut challenges, physical challenges, and things that were just showing up.
I want to just dive a little bit deeper into the striving part of you. Because I think, so many listeners can relate to that. And I relate to that. When I was in school, getting an A was a non-negotiable goal. It was like, of course, that's what I'm striving for. I was never striving to get a B, and then I was striving to get on the tennis team. I was striving to be the best of there was so much that I was putting energy into being the best. Where does that come from? Because even as I've reflected over my own life, and I'm sitting with that right now, I'm sitting with this idea about the difference between striving and being, and why do we feel the need to strive? How have you made sense of that for yourself?
In my opinion, I've done a lot of deep reflections, and it comes down to ever since a very young age, I even struggled with my voice then. So I would, oh, what do you think? Or I would be afraid to put myself out there. And I think honestly, it just had a lot of rejection early on, whether it's socially in school and in preschool, I had a lot of that. So it was tied to my identity of what can I control? I can control my grades. I can control whatever it is. And I'm sure we'll talk a bit about identity as well, but that became my identity. Oh, okay, I'm known for being good. I'm known for being this. This is what gets the recognition. This is what gets whatever. Even if I didn't get the recognition, I at least aspired to that in myself. And I was always very athletic. And I think this is what the difference is because I was always very athletic and I loved to run. I had a ton of energy as a kid. And that was fun for me. So, like the hyper competitiveness, I wanted to be the best I could. And I think from the healthy environment of athletics, I could feel the difference of, okay, it's still fun. But then when it's not fun and you're doing it based on obligation, that's the difference I feel. But that became my identity where, oh, okay, I made this box, I made this identity. I'm going to stick with it because that's who I am now. I am the person who gets good grades. I'm the person who doesn't speak up for whatever. I go with the flow. It's good to go with the flow sometimes, but at what point is it actually affecting your life? Is it affecting you negatively?
Yeah. So in those instances, like when you are striving so much to be the best at a sport, at what point are you just not getting enough sleep because you're always practicing? Or like, where does it start to overtake other areas of your life so that you're no longer a whole person or you're expressing yourself in one place way too much? I love going back to this identity piece where what does striving actually says about you. And for you, Jen, you mentioned that if I work really hard, I can get really grades, and that's what I can control. And then over time, you just became associated with the person who gets the good grades, the person who gets the great job, the person who is able to do all of the things because you put your mind to it. And so it just became part of how you operated almost on autopilot.
And I think the thing that I noticed, and in this moment, is I was doing less of the things that lit me up.
Yeah.
That was like the art and the creativity and the nature, like all of the things that I used to love, I was doing less of for that sake of obligation. And if that's the
Mhm.
case, then it's not helping. It's okay to be competitive. It's okay to push yourself because I think a little differently a lot of times than people around me. And I have these creative ideas and I want to run with those. So I want to push myself a little bit further based on what someone might have told me or society telling me I can do. So I think there's a healthy balance there. But if I'm not doing the things that light me up, it I that was a problem. And that's where the identity was. My identity was here
Mhm.
and I forgot about all these other
Mhm.
parts that really are me,
Mhm.
but I'm too focused on this what I think I should be.
Your desire to be so great at this job that required so much of you became unhealthy. And then you started experiencing health issues. And it's your body's way of saying, hey, wake up. This isn't working. We need to take a step back and look at this deeper. So, what were you experiencing?
Yeah, and I want to give some context too, because this is probably a few year time frame where I started to unpack all of these
Mhm.
different layers to it. So I'll go into that because I think I was ignoring my voice and my body a bit
Mhm.
for so long. Okay, stress, and I would stay up really late learning stuff in school, like all of this stuff I was used to ignoring the signs for my body. Then it took me like this time frame of a transition between where I was then until now. So at the startup, for example, it was really cool what I did. I was managing international events. I was implementing their Salesforce and doing a lot of things from data and everything business development. Like that part was really cool. I loved that piece.
Mhm.
But it was the environment, the leaders, and myself included, because I said yes to a lot of stuff. I built my own
Yeah.
environment in one way, and another place I was tolerating a bad environment. And what was happening
Mhm.
was I started having just gastro issues. Just okay, I was maybe it was just uncomfortable, and I was developing like a lot of inflammation. So I would eat something and then immediately either be bloated or etc. It started like that. So I would do all the testing. I did the allergy testing and the dairy testing and endoscopy, colonoscopy, all of the
Oh,
things. And I found things that I had to take care of. And it was just, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll go with the flow and take one step at a time. So it wasn't too drastic at that point. It was at the moment, I think it was just avoid fried food and avoid something else, like a very high level, avoid stuff
yeah.
to be less inflamed. But I was stressed all of the time. My sleep patterns, I was not happy. I was constant in fight or flight.
Mm.
I um I would always make excuses. There were times when I would go to the gym at the end of the day and that was like the one thing I would give back to myself. But
Mhm.
then there were weeks that didn't happen. And
Mm.
again, it was my body was screaming,
Mm.
but what happened was actually after I left the startup.
Oh, that's interesting. Your body was screaming because it was having all of these issues. What was your head saying, though?
I was trying to reason with that. I was going to the doctors and like, okay, get this one thing
Mhm.
taken care of because I developed a lactose intolerance in college. So I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
just maybe I figured something else out and I thought what I thought was happening was like I thought I kept accidentally eating dairy. Oh, someone must have put butter in something, but it wasn't that. I realized no, I made these things myself. It's not that. So I kind of just brushed it off. My head was like, oh, it's something else. A little bit in denial. It's fine. I work harder. It'll be good. Hurry up at the doctor so I could go back to work.
Yeah, yeah. And how good was your doctor at asking about your stress levels? Did your doctor help you come to an understanding that stress might be related to this problem?
Not then. It was very, because I went to almost every different doctor. It
Mm.
was pretty intense because no one had a clear answer.
I think this is so helpful for all of us to hear because often we go to the doctor trying to treat a symptom, but there's a underlying cause. And unless we get real with ourselves and talk about stress as a factor with our doctor, they're not always going to be the first one to point out, oh, stress could be contributing to what you're experiencing, right?
And to me, it was normal, so I didn't think anything of it. Because I used to get stressed out when I was in school. Like when I was
Yeah.
younger, it's Sunday. Oh, I gotta get all my stuff together.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah. I see myself so much in you. I haven't unpacked all of the layers of what striving has meant for me yet, but I think actually for me, it was about safety. It was about
Mm,
safety that if I could put all of my effort and energy toward getting the good grades, then I knew I could get into the good school. Then I knew I
yeah.
could get the good job. And then eventually, when I got into the working world, I knew I could get promoted. So it was like, oh, it just means safety and stability if I can continue to achieve. And that became, as you noted so intelligently, my identity became tied to the overachieving, but underlying it was around safety. So thanks for helping me work that out, Jen, right
Yeah.
here live on the call.
Yeah, I mean, in real talk, what do we need as humans? We need a sense of belonging. We need safety. We need feel seen, heard, and respected at a different level from a bare minimum, feeling worthy enough. And I
Mhm,
think a lot of it at a deep level, it goes back to that of,
mhm,
am I worthy enough for this? Or do I have to prove it to myself? Do I
mm,
have to prove it? Oh, even with certifications, a lot of times there are some jobs you do need certifications, you do need education,
Right.
but also at what level of is all of these certifications enough and
Yep.
proving it to yourself, oh, okay, I'm good because I had the certification. Great. But then there's other things you don't need a certification for. Even
Right.
launching a podcast or doing a project, like you don't need it if you have the history. So I think it goes back to worth and it goes back to that. And
Mhm.
it's very deep.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in us, but also it kept me safe then.
I'm so glad we had that identity conversation because in my work, and I'm sure in your work too, Jen, this is a big part of the work we
Yeah.
do in Bold Moves coaching. Because until we can get to the layer beneath where you are today and how you're feeling that contrast in your life and the why of it, you have to have the awareness in order to make the bold move you want. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to repeat the same patterns over and over again. It's a process, Jen. And
Yeah.
you and I both have been through multiple years of uncovering all of these layers and just taking those baby steps to remove ourselves from there, but that's where it starts. Take us through the messy middle of this because there does become a time where it will wake you up.
Yeah. So this is where there's a few different things that's step at a time. So I was going through all of these things, diagnoses and figuring that out from the startup. But also, I realized enough then that with the stress, I'm like, I cannot handle this anymore. Whether it's mental breakdowns, whether it was ever, I could not physically handle this environment. So I took a step on bet on myself and chose myself to leave. I didn't understand why people were still there and in the same environment. It was something that it was, without getting too much into it, it was very challenging and it wasn't the best environment. I left. That awareness was, I think, one of the pivotal points for me because I took a step for me and I went into the unknown. So I went into more of the finance side of things, where it was the behind the scenes of marketing. Instead of like doing a lot of different things, I did the marketing. I had to tell people what to do, and at the same time, I'd go to the executives and speak to them. And that was really cool at first, but also COVID happened. What happened is a perfect storm of everything happening at once. So COVID happened. I had a hard time with that because I had a family member who had been going through a lot of intense testing and treatment and
Mhm.
COVID was happening. So it's like I can't take
Oh,
any risk.
yeah.
What am I
It's
gonna
like
do?
it's like coming at you at all sides. You're like, "I've just moved beyond this very stressful job. I'm trying to find my footing again with something else." And then COVID happens, and that externally is feeling disorienting, but then you also have a sick family member or friend, and you're worried and concerned. So I can see how this is creating a really hard environment for you.
Yeah, I was dealing with a lot mentally and figuring that out. I took this new job more of a manager within data, within the data sphere. So less creativity, less of the things that I really love,
Mhm.
but I like to problem solve. I'm like, okay, I'll do this. That unveiled so many things to me.
Mhm.
So what happened was through this time frame, I was also having a hard time because with COVID, you had to work from home. But one thing came up that was I had to figure out I was having a hard time focusing. So turns out like a lot of what I was dealing with was actually ADHD. I had no idea
Ah,
because I thought it was anxiety. Turns out when I worked on like tools and techniques to help my ADHD, it helped with my anxiety. Who
mhm.
figured? But I was struggling with that and it all came up to surface. The gastro stuff kept getting worse. So I'm like, what's happening now? Because I was back in data land because that's what was happening. I was in that same pattern of listening to everyone else. I was so stressed because I was saying yes to everything. I was in this higher realm, which I wanted great on paper. It was like a great career path. My next step would be one step further. I was going to four different C suite executives, but I started realizing that my whole life was not what I wanted it to be. And like you said, hearing, I was so stressed at times that one day I could not hear. One day, a coworker was like, Jen, they said after the fact, and I could not hear them. I could not hear them. And then I started freaking out because I'm like, what's happening? And it was because I was so stressed. I was having like a panic attack and I didn't know what
Mm,
was going on. But the problem was the hearing didn't come back quickly. It was like all day. I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna actually
mm,
figure this out. And it took a couple moments of my life, like I alluded to earlier, of me realizing I have the self-awareness to make a change. And for leaving that other job, that was a really big step for me because that first job was my first job out of college. And then I went to this other organization because of the culture and because of the other pieces. But then all this stuff was happening again. So I'm like, well, it's not just everybody else. Like there's some ownership I need to take from me. And at that point, that was a seed planted of I need to focus on my own health. And I was trying to be myself. I still didn't know myself yet to really own that. And then what I started doing was putting pieces together of what I actually like. But in those moments, I I really had a hard time because my body was crying for help. So I was at that point of I want to do something
Mhm,
different, but now I'm in the spot of I don't know what else to do. I know I need to make some type of change, but how?
mhm. Hi, friend. It's Kristen. I hope you're really enjoying this episode. I just wanted to take a quick pause from today's conversation to ask you a question. How many times have you listened to a story on this show and seen yourself in my guest because their story was so relatable? You've had a similar experience and you thought, I know exactly how she feels. I relate to her experience and I know I need to do something to change my life too. But then life gets lifing and you go right back to ignoring that inner whisper about what's next. You know where I'm going with this, right? You find yourself wondering, okay, Kristen, sure, but how do I actually do this without completely burning out? I see you and I've got you. Inspiration is great, but it doesn't change your life without action. That's why I write the Bold Moves newsletter. I personally distill these episodes into the exact mindset shifts and bite sized micro actions you can start using to make the change you're craving. It's the clarity and the mentorship you need to pursue your bold move as the main character of your life. So stop waiting, stop wondering, and together let's make your bold move happen. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe right now, and I'll see you in your inbox. All right, now let's get back to this conversation.
I was at that point of I want to do something
Mm,
different, but now I'm in the spot of I don't know what else to do. I know I need to make some type of change, but how?
mhm. Right, right. Which is actually how this podcast got started. Bold moves, how did you know? The how did you know is really all of those initial questions about, I know I want to make a change,
Yeah,
but how? We talked about how you knew. It was clear that it was your body was screaming at you that you were going down the wrong path or a detrimental path and you needed to
yeah,
recalibrate. I'm curious now that you have this realization and you know your body's screaming at you. But yeah, it's how do I figure out what I really want after years of following a prescribed traditional path,
yeah.
right? That's the big question. So, when you think back to your experience and everything you work through to find that voice in terms of how do I figure out what I want, what are a few things you know for sure to be true about figuring out what you
I
really
had to
want?
go so far back to realize what I did like. Because as I mentioned, I was so used to not listening to my voice that I had a hard time figuring that out. But I knew I reflected. So what I did was I really took time to just do things and make a list of things that I love, that give me energy, that I love to do, whether or not if I still did that, and no matter how silly it is. So I knew I loved art.
Mhm,
I knew I loved creativity and
mhm,
being outside. Those are things that I knew that I loved. And it's funny because I went to school, I
mhm,
when I applied for colleges, how many years ago, I went and for marketing or environmental science or undeclared. Like I was like kind of those areas, those buckets. And I knew that. So I'm like, what am I gonna do to fuel my life in those areas? I used to do gymnastics. Okay, can I do some other type of movement? For me, it was yoga. And I would just take
mhm,
action and do little things, even if I didn't know how it would be, just to try to use it as information of, okay, I really like this. I
mhm,
really I'm finding this creativity. I used to do so much stuff. Like for Valentine's Day, I used to like make these gift things for everyone. Like, how do I use my creativity? And that was a gift that I realized I had that connection, but I was so removed from that
Mhm,
that the
mhm,
connection I held and the gift that I had of really listening to others and that empathy was non-existent because I was
mhm,
so much in go, go, go
mhm.
mode. So I took those moments to reflect and start really, really small. And for me, that was going way back because I ignored it for so long.
Yeah, going way back, thinking about who you were back even through all of these different phases of your life. So you're identifying what you like, and not only what you like, but it's like what are those natural
Yeah.
states of flow? And for you it sounds like creativity, arts and crafts was some way where you just lost yourself in those moments. I also found in my own experience, starting to hear my own voice again was like, what are my values? That was a really big part of my journey because I realized when I was doing my own career coaching that I was bending my own values to adhere to other
Mm,
people's values. So when you talked about, you were there was so much demanding of you, right? Of you in the corporate environment. And the environment itself was tough, and you didn't really go into great detail about what that was, why it was tough. But I also operated in some hard environments, and I realized that I was feeling challenged because I wasn't getting the autonomy I needed to be at my best, and autonomy is an important value for
yeah.
me, as is flexibility. That's another value. And so when I was able to start seeing that some of my personal values weren't being reflected in the environment and the jobs that I had, then it was like it was that combination of what I like and where I'm in flow and what my natural talents are with where can I find a place that aligns with my values. When those two pieces can meet, that I think is how you start to put some puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, exactly right. When you say values, for me, it was inclusivity. Autonomy now I realize is a key value of mine, but for then it was like integrity and creativity. So like the authenticity, creativity, that integrity, those were key values of mine. So how am I going to live my life from that? So over time, when I was training at the gym, I was also doing more towards those values. A spot a sensory gym and community space, I'm going to go there. And for inclusion, I feel good here. I like making other people feel included. I'm going to work in those areas that other people too. In those moments, I don't remember if I told you this story, but when I was at the gym, I was just doing some classes here. So I noticed that I would go through my 8 hour, 9 hour day. I would go and teach a fitness class for 45 minutes, but after the day, I would typically be drained. Like I just want to go to sleep. And then I would lead this class, and all of a sudden, I would get energy back and I'd be inspired as if I just woke up that morning, like, and drank 2 cups of coffee. So I'm like, okay, there's my energy back. And one particular person I was working, I heard the words I can't a lot. It was one-on-one training. I can't, I can't, I can't. Like, how about we try? How about we try? I'm with you. So I'm going to ask you to step up onto this box and let's do it together. Hold my hand, step up. So she did. She held my hand, she stepped up onto the box, and she said, I can't. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You just did it. You just did it now. And I'm like, no, you're going to do this for you. I'm right here, but you're going to do this on your own and tell me how you feel. So she goes up and steps on top of the box. And I said, how do you feel? She says, I feel powerful. I said, you are powerful. And that itself is the shift because I realized that by tapping into my values in that moment, it was inclusivity and creativity and authenticity. Because I'm silly all the time. It was in that moment I realized that while I was still working at that financial organization, I had that moment, and now I had a choice. I can help inspire people real time in the community, or I could not. And what happened was I would go back to work and have this new sense of power and autonomy and like all these things in my head. And all of a sudden these ideas kept coming in my head. TrueIcon kept coming in my head. Like all of the things that like started bubbling up, like what I want to do. True to yourself. I need in this world, I need to help people be true to themselves so that they can boldly grow. And this was while I was crunching numbers at data and reporting to executives and that type of thing. And I'm like, I had for once in my life something opened up where
Mm.
I'm like, I
From
get it now.
from
Yeah,
within,
from
not from
within,
yeah,
not
not
from
from
anyone else.
because you had been open and curious to exploring all of the ways in which things weren't working,
Yes,
and that curiosity eventually led to a whisper within.
yes. And then the whisper became louder and
Right.
louder because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was
Yeah.
in the day, I was thinking, okay, what else can I do? And it
Yeah.
was just it was so much louder from such a whisper, from not even knowing it was there. And
Right.
like I cannot stop thinking about this. I need to leave. I need to change my life.
You say, don't let the first no come from yourself.
Mm,
And so I know you have personal experience with this. So as we start discovering what we really want and we finally hear that voice, we often say no to ourselves. We keep
yeah,
repeating the patterns, we
yeah.
keep going back. But how did you decide that you are not going to let no hold you back and you are going to move forward?
It became so clear that I was putting so much into everyone else. So with the different companies I worked for, I would save them tons of money by making all these changes or to help with a new revenue stream. And I'll do all this stuff to help
Mhm.
other people. And it just hit me like, why can't I do that? So, I mean, the whole time I've been doing some type of professional development. I think it was phrased as confidence or whatever, or personal development. Like I was listening to the podcast. I was kept listening to things and people and even if they weren't in my personal life of people who have done it. So I had something, one of those conversations just hit at the right time of like, you can do it. So from saying no to myself, I think it just clicked when I was like, wait a minute, I've done this all for everyone else. I've done this. I can do this for myself. There's no reason I can't do it. And I think what was happening was I was starting to prove it more in what I was doing. So I was building my confidence and I just had it. I just had it. I'm like, am I going to live a life that's full of these health challenges? Because clearly something's going on. Or am I going to follow what gives me energy? Because there's something there. There's something if I have energy that I didn't before, what if I build my whole life around that? What if I do more values-based actions and aligned actions and tapping into those things I used to love or still loved? And little by little, I was finding my voice in those moments. It was like an epiphany. It was, are you performing for anyone else? And then I look back at my own life and I'm like, wait a minute, my whole life I've built for everyone else. But for the first time in my life, my path, I see it. And no one necessarily told me this in the past, but I see this path. And I think once I realized neuroplasticity, the brain can change. That helped me out a lot because it got me out of a fixed mindset. That's exactly it. I realized, oh, I'm not stuck here. It goes back to that identity. I realized that I can change at any point, and just because I'm in this one exact scenario, I can't blame anyone. It's not what my parents said, it's not what anyone else said, society says, it's like me. And that the part that I realized that the brain can change from, I'm a science brain too. So I'm like, okay, if I could get it, then it's possible. Then it's not like my genetics that's keeping me shy. It's not whatever. It's just I can choose to work at habits that feed me versus hurt me. And quite honestly, hurt me a lot in many ways.
I totally love the neuroplasticity. That was a huge actually unlock for me as well. And we've done a few episodes around neuroplasticity on this podcast because similar to you, it was like, oh my gosh, I can change
Yeah.
the way I think. Like I see the motions in my brain happening, like reconnecting the little synapses,
Yeah.
right? You can do that to your brain. So you start thinking in new ways that are more helpful to the new life you want to build and lead and live. That's another good subject to start learning more about neuroplasticity if you haven't heard that term before. because it can really help you think about what beliefs do you want to change and what will you do to change them. And then, as you said, Jen, making the habits to make those changes. A listener asked a question that she wanted us to help answer, which is, how do you start listening to your gut?
Yeah, I would say observing first what's around. One, what are you angry at? What are you resentful for? What are all those things that you might feel like you're blaming other things? Because does that mean that you might have said yes to all these other things that are hurting you? Like, observe, just observe. Have grace for yourself and have respect for yourself, but observe
Mhm.
where you are now. And then in terms of listening to your gut, I think it goes back to following, really, for me, it was energy. Following the things that either give you more energy, maybe it feels aligned, maybe it feels more flow, things that feel less clunky, less like really stiff and you know those moments, like the moments where you feel the fear, the resentful, the blaming, like a lot of those types of areas. Those might not be the right spots for you, but I can't decide that for someone. But to listen to your gut, for me, it was taking it from like a level of, is this what other people are telling me, or is this what I'm saying? For a while, it took me a long time to find that.
Yeah.
Also, some people might have a hard time trusting their gut, due to past patterns or whatever. Like, so just taking it as information. So if I'm going to make a decision, I want to reflect on it, but I know myself, it's giving myself time. So for me, finding my gut was realizing, going back to the things I liked, what why do I like those, and am I doing this for other people? Am I doing this to prove something, or I'm doing this for me? And I'm realizing, oh, I genuinely like this, or it genuinely gives me energy. That's it. Not for ego, not so that I can get
Mhm.
accolades, whatever. If I'm doing it for that, I'm doing it because I want to avoid fear, maybe question
Mhm.
that. So if it's feeling natural, and if it's helping you, if it's hurting you, no, for the gut. But for me, it
Yeah.
was learning to listen to my body, because if I didn't, I saw and felt the consequences.
A former guest of mine, she's a former CIA analyst. They have to be situationally aware of whatever they're encountering and really be able to make quick judgments. And when I asked her about how she does this, she's trained her body to know what a yes, no, and neutral state feels in the body. I'll link the episode in the show notes because it's a great one. But basically, if you can think about something that is an immediate hell yes to you and how that feels in your body, just note that, right? If you can then think about something that is a heck no, something that you do not want to do, it is an immediate no. What does that feel like in your body? Where do you feel it in your body? And then a neutral. So something that you really couldn't care less about. And once you start tuning into these things about yes, no, and neutral, I think that's going to help you tune into your gut is
Yeah,
about.
and it goes back to, is the first no from you. So like if you're really excited about it and you hold that, but
Yes.
then you start, oh, I can't do this because of this, or it's gonna mean that, and then you convince yourself out of it. That's what I mean of, are you saying no to yourself
Yes.
first, or you're gonna let society, like if you own a business, are you gonna let the business tell you, the environment, the users, the customers help guide you, or are you gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna do this because it's not gonna work? That's you saying no. So in this case, yeah, like listening to that in yourself. And if you're really excited,
Mm-hmm.
don't convince yourself otherwise just because
Yeah,
you're afraid, because that's
exactly.
the fear talking.
All right. My final question is, what do you know today about being bold you wish you would have known earlier on?
There's a lot of freedom to being bold when you have that autonomy. I find that
Mhm.
being bold has just freed up a lot of that extra stuff that I don't need anymore, so I feel better. Like, it's that
Yeah.
autonomy is so much better in my life. And I'm not doing things for other people, in the sense of, I'm not doing things to prove something to someone else because this is what they said I should do. We mentioned the shoulds a lot earlier. I'm
Mhm.
doing it because I believe it. And then you start finding your gut more. So it might
Yeah.
be a challenge to get to that point, but
Mhm.
it's really, how do you want to feel? By being bold, you're being authentic. If you could live and
Yeah.
not just perform life, I want to live life.
Mhm.
I don't want to perform
Mhm.
life. It's so much harder. Think about how much energy you're using performing life. So
Yeah.
That it comes with that autonomy.
Awesome. Jen, thank you for being here. I've just loved going through your your transformation process, you know?
Yeah.
And thanks for being so generous with sharing all the lessons that you've taken away along the way. And now turning it into something that others can learn from and hopefully live a bolder life
Yeah.
themselves. Where can people find you, Jen?
You could find me at beatrueicon.com, or it would be Jennifer DeGroff on LinkedIn. I'm always posting stuff. I'm
Yeah.
building my Instagram too, but you can find me there.
If you love this episode, please show us some love in return with a 5-star review. The reviews actually help people find this show. So, more women who need these stories of empowerment to inspire their own bold moves can find us. So, Jen, this is what I'm doing new this season. What can people who love this episode write in their review today? Something that emboldens them to step into their midlife click.
If there's a point that you feel that you're either at the break of making a bold move or had some type of inspiration to take a next step, even if it is something little. So, any inspiration you had today, I would invite you to share it in the
Mhm.
reviews and in the comments. Kristen's always great with bringing the community together, especially in those moments of bold moves, which can be very challenging. You need community.
Thank you so much, Jen. Okay, for everybody listening, we're so grateful you're here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.